can we ask ourselves that would be beneficial? We have this iceberg model that we can use and fill in all those different details about ourselves. But we can ask ourselves, why are we reacting this way? So what's going on in my iceberg that I am reacting the way I'm reacting? Really take time to think about that and about what our feelings are. Where in my body am I feeling those feelings? That's not something that a lot of folks take the time to consider or have heard about before. So if I'm feeling angry or sad, where in my body am I feeling angry or sad? And am I tingling? Am I hot? Am I cold? Is my heart racing? Is there a knot in my stomach or butterflies in my stomach? And then these are things also that when we're in conflict, we can start to take note of. So if your stomach starts to get that knot when you're, interacting with that person you're in conflict with again, it's like a little red flag. Oh, okay, there's the knot in my stomach. And just to notice that about yourself, and then to think, how can I take care of myself in this conflict and in this moment? What do I need to do for myself to take care of myself in this? Because it's difficult, it's stressful, and to find different ways to take care of yourself in that moment. But first to realize the little signs as to what is going on in yourself. And then you can be more focused on specific strategies to give yourself that care that you need. Another good question to ask is, have I been in a similar conflict before or a similar situation before? And if so, how is the situation the same? And how is it different? How did I react then? And is that similar or different than how I'm reacting now? So you need a lot of curiosity. It's like you're a detective and really trying to figure out all the different pieces as to how you're feeling and how you're acting and reacting and why. How is this conflict impacting me? What needs of mine are not being met in this conflict or feel like they're not being met? Am I having a fight, flight, or freeze reaction because I feel like I'm in danger in this conflict? And I'm not talking always physical danger. There's emotional or mental danger too. So if we have trauma in our past, it's very important to realize that we can react based on that trauma, even if the current situation is not a dangerous situation for us. And I'm not going to get too deeply in that, except to mention it to you and to be aware of it. So do I feel like I'm in danger? Am I reacting like I'm in danger? And then assessing, am I actually in danger? And just really considering that and thinking about it. You may be or you may not be. Am I able to calmly communicate my thoughts and feelings in a way that they will be received? And if not, how can I find strategies and ways to be able to calmly communicate with that person or those people? Can I be curious about the fact that their intentions in this conflict, the other person's intentions, might possibly be different than what I'm assuming? Can I have an open heart and be curious about, are they actually, intending what I think, or could it possibly be something different based on their whole iceberg experience of their life? Am I interested to learn more about the other person and be curious and compassionate while maintaining healthy boundaries? That's also very important to ask. Am I actually interested about what's going on with them? Am I actually compassionate about them? So those are really important things for us to consider in our own personal self-reflection. And then we move on to how we can address our relationship to the other person. And so creating a space where we can have conversations with that person, asking them what they need to have a conversation. So when we've done our own internal work, and that's an ongoing life journey, it's not, we sit down for a couple of weeks and take time and then we're done. It's an ongoing journey for us, a lifetime journey. But if we're willing to do that work in ourselves, we're much more open to what the other person might need and how unique people's needs are. And so for others, it's really good to ask, I'd really like to have this conversation with you or these conversations with you. How can we do this in a way where we both feel good, where both our needs are being met? Where could we have the conversation? What kind of conversation? And so, again, I encourage you to take your compassion into these conversations, your deep curiosity, withholding judgment, really noticing and observing, and thinking of ways you can ask questions to get really deep answers. So you want to ask open-ended questions, not a question where they can answer yes or no, but a question that invites a long, detailed answer, and a question where you're willing to listen to the answer instead of reacting to the answer. Like, do you actually want to hear their answer? And that's something that we have to ask ourselves. Do we actually want to listen deeply to their answer, even if it might mean they're saying something about us that we're going to have to consider after and think about after? So questions, what are some sample questions that we could ask the person that we're in conflict with? I am curious how this is feeling for you. How is this conflict feeling for you? I'm really curious. Can you help me understand how you're feeling? Can you help me understand your perspective or how you're reacting or your experience that's led up to this conflict? How have you been affected and impacted by this conflict? What was your intention? Did you mean that the way I think you did? Or like, what were you thinking? But like with the compassionate tone, not what were you thinking? So we really have to think about our tone in our message and the words, and it's much better to have conversations in person than over text or email. I wouldn't suggest that ever. So much can get lost in translation over online conversations. And then you could ask them, have you been in a similar situation before? And if so, how did that impact you? So it's similar to the questions we've been asking ourselves. What needs do you have in this situation or in this conflict that feel like they're not being met? Can you tell me more? Can you tell me more? You can ask that after each thing they say to you. Can you tell me a little bit more about this? When people feel listened to, their nervous system automatically relaxes. We all love to feel listened to. If we have that friend or that sister or that parent or that partner who just gets us and just listens to us, we just feel ourselves relaxing and we feel so good, right? We all need that. It's a basic human need. We need to feel validated. We need to feel listened to and loved. And so if we can offer that, first of all, we offer it to ourselves with the work we're going to do on our relationship to ourselves. Because that's something we can always offer to ourselves, even if someone else isn't offering it to us. And then if we can offer it to somebody else, that can really change the dynamics of the conflict. And I've seen that happen a lot of times. If people know that they're really being cared about and listened to, it can really change the dynamics. So that leads me into one of my last questions. So what happens? I hear this a lot from people, but what happens if the other person still does not want to talk or have these conversations? Really, we can only do what we can do. But if we're doing our own personal work, our own internal work on our relationship to ourselves, and we're doing our best to approach the conflict in this way, it will still shift the conflict. It might not turn out how we want, but it will still somewhat shift it, because if we change even one or two things about how we're acting or reacting in a conflict, it will change something about the conflict. It will shift something within the conflict. And we will feel differently about it when we're acting and reacting differently, and when we understand ourselves better, and when we're approaching the conflict better, and when we're able to take care of ourselves better in the conflict and to do our best to take care of the other person along with ourselves. There has to be a balance, definitely. So I would encourage you to use these icebergs for yourself and for conflicts that you're in with other people. And then when you're asking these questions and getting curious, and if the other person is willing to work it out with you, then you can get creative about how you are resolving that conflict or transforming the conflict. There's not just two answers, not just your answer and my answer. There's many answers. And so you can also brainstorm about creative ways to then move on to transform the conflict. And how can we create something, a better relationship, a deeper relationship than we had before? But that has to be based on all this understanding we've just talked about and all this work we've talked about. and the curiosity, the compassion, and the non-judgment. And so, yes, I would encourage you to use the icebergs in your life and in order to be part of the process of transforming your relationships and transforming conflict into something that's even better than you had before the conflict ever came up.